provide discounts for residents who make shopping locally their priority. Everything from restaurants like Corky's to fun times at SB Raceway and much, much more. If you're not currently a Teamster and you want access to these local business discounts, contact Jennifer at 909-889-8377, extension 224. Give her a call. That number again is 909-889-8377, extension 224. Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about. Want to talk about this Time Magazine article I came across today. It's one of these moments where a headline catches your attention and you go, that's how you write a headline. It caught your attention, but it wasn't factually inaccurate. We saw some photos and the stories coming out of New York of the homeless guy who was choked to death, as passengers feared. We don't have all the details, and I don't know that we're going to anytime soon. But the headline was, it grabbed my attention. Nobody cares about homeless people until they die. And I'm going, that is the right frame. And I would argue, I would have added to that. And even then, I doubt very few people really care, because we don't seem to be doing much about it. Now, they went into the story of this Jordan Neely, the guy who was killed. And, look, I mean, another story of someone whose life was broken. His mother was murdered by her boyfriend when he was 14. Didn't finish school, got into some trouble, had some drug problems. Just a life of one obstacle, one bit of chaos after another, and no stability. And again, one of these things of no family structure that I wish everyone had. The kind of family structure that would be supportive. Unfortunately, this guy didn't. And this is where I come back to society has to play a role in this. They point out that it's been reported he was arrested some 42 times, mostly for nonsense. I mean, this is one of those things, he was arrested 42 times. He's got a rap sheet down the... Yeah, he got arrested for vagrancy, probably, for loitering, for panhandling, just nonsense. And instead of having a system that said, hey, we're going to deal with this, we had a system that just kept pushing him around. For instance, evidently he hit an old lady. I guess it was in 2021. He was arrested again. He then had a judge said, hey, we're gonna put you into rehab, get you some help. Don't use drugs for 15 months and you'll be okay. Well, evidently he left the place after 2 weeks. A system that did not follow up. And as the article says, very few people cared about this guy until he was killed. And now politically it's become, which camp are you in? Are you in the red hats or the blue hats? You got the R or the D, or you're a conservative or a liberal. We've got our sides without actually talking about the issue itself. And as I said from the beginning, and this was my hot take gut reaction. People in desperate situations do desperate things. And if there's a lack of humane solutions, inhumane solutions will fill the void. And that's what we've seen here. We saw people who were afraid of this guy because he was acting erratically. He was causing a disruption. And the only people who would interact with him were going to do it in all of the wrong ways. The person who got behind him and started and choked him to death, I'm sure, as his lawyer says, he didn't mean to cause any harm. But he was put in that situation where that's the choice he made. And what it is, and this is what's frustrating to me. We have a system that now wants to deal with this individual thing without looking at the much bigger picture. I look at, to my point of, each side wanting their thing. Jesse Waters over at the Fox place. He tweeted out, white liberals sentenced Jordan Neely to death on the streets, and now they're using him as a talking point. Does this feed the outrage machine? Does this make people on the right, on the extreme, go, yeah, those white, it's their fault? It's crazy to me, especially when you look at the fact that people like Jesse Waters and his ilk have done great harm over the last 40, 50 years in destroying what little safety net, social safety net that could have helped this guy. Years ago, we used to, when I had more time, and I regret not being able to do this anymore, but when we used to do these Hungry and Homeless for the holiday events, where we'd live in a parking lot of a supermarket for 10 days, and a local trucking company would lend us a trailer, and we would fill up the trailer with food and give it to the food bank, and we'd raise money for the homeless shelter, and raise awareness of the issue, and talk about it in a way that we hoped would be constructive, and in a way that we hoped would help lead to solutions and not leave that void. Because again, the lack of humane solutions leads to inhumane outcomes. And, I remember going in with all of the same stereotypical views of people who are homeless. Mostly just people who made bad choices, drug addicts, lazy people, things like that. And what I came away with, and this is when you expose yourself to different ideas, different kinds of situations, different people, you come away with very different points of view. What I came away with is the vast majority of the people we met, they were struggling with mental health problems. Because what we used to do is during the day, we would be there and people would drop off food and we'd interact with the customers coming in and out of the supermarket, and we would, do that stuff. But at night, when consumer traffic slowed down, we invited the homeless people to come out of the woods and out of the places where they were holed up, and we would feed them. The grocery store was nice enough to give us as many hot dogs and hot dog buns as we wanted. So at night, that's what we would do. And we would provide a safe space for them to be for a short period of time. And I was fortunate enough to hear their stories. And the vast majority of them were because at the time, the state had closed down the state mental health hospitals and just dumped these people. They tried. I'm not gonna go as far as they just dumped them, but ultimately they just dumped them onto the streets because the resources to take care of them weren't there. And it rolled down onto the local police departments. So you go, the guy was arrested 42 times. Can you believe that? Yeah. These were the people that I was talking to who were going through the same problems. They didn't see police as their friend, as a helper. They saw the police as someone who was going to harass them, give them a hard time, push them somewhere else, let them be someone else's problem. And what you ended up with are people who were in the shadows, exploitable, abusable, and really desperate. And as I've said before, when there's desperation, when people feel desperate, they will do desperate things. And I remember at the time, I came out and I said, look, I believe this has a lot to do with the closures of the state hospital, the cutting of social safety net funding. Now, this is going back into the early 2000s. And I got a call from the governor's office, a Democrat. No, Rick, you're wrong. It's not the state hospitals. It's not the cuts in funding. We're doing all these wonderful things for these folks. We're doing this wonderful stuff. And the Republican mayor called me, said, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. We're doing all these wonderful things. And I got this thought in my head, if both of them are calling me, if both of them are telling me, no, you're wrong, it can't possibly be, it made me go, I'm right. Because it was bipartisan that, no, we wouldn't do that. And yet, as we've cut these social safety net programs, as we've cut this help, what we've done is we've created more desperation. And I think back to one guy in particular that we met along the way, because look, it can happen to any of us. This was the other thing I came away with, that no matter where you are, what station in life you're at, any bad things can happen. And the reason that I believe so wholeheartedly in having a social safety net that's strong enough to help people in their hour of need is because of Joe. I met Joe, a Vietnam vet, lifelong conservative Republican, never missed a day of work, never collected unemployment, never needed anything from anyone until he got sick, had a heart attack. And the job that he was working at, shuffling railroad engineers around, driving them from one place to another in a van, they had crummy health care. And, he was in the hospital with this heart attack, and the bills are piling up, and he ends up not having income coming in because guess what? No paid sick leave. So he burns through his savings in no time whatsoever. And his landlord throws him out while he's still in the hospital, while he's still on the mend. Moves all of his stuff out onto the curb, and there's no one to stand up for Joe, no one to advocate for him, no state policies at the time, none of that stuff to help him. So and now he gets to the point where, hey, you can't go back to the job because you've been gone too long, you're out of luck. Now he's homeless, he's unemployable, and he's sick. The state picked up his health care bill because that's what we do through Medicaid. And good on us for doing that. We spent a couple $100,000 to keep Joe alive. And then we kicked him to the street, which is where we found Joe. Because one of the things that we did is when we would do these events, we would go and we'd get a bunch of cardboard boxes, a bunch of refrigerator boxes, and line them up under the trailer. And we would rent them out to people so that they could pretend to be homeless for a night. And for $20, you could play homeless on our Skid Row. And we would donate that money to the homeless shelter. And we gave one of the boxes to Joe. And as he said, the 10 days we were out in that parking lot were the safest that he had felt in months. Because he was sick, he was weak, and he was broke. And there was no help for him. And the help that we could get him took a long time to do. Now, when it ended, we ended up renting a hotel room for him for a bit until he could get into a VA center on the other side of the state. And then a couple of months later, he passed. But this is one of those moments where you start going, it could happen to you. It could happen to me. And I know we're told we're this grand religious nation. How can we allow that to happen? Now, I couple that with the fact that there was a Bloomberg report out. An LA Times report out that said life expectancy in the U.S. has declined. And, they go through the reality. It has a lot to do with the fact that, guess what? Policy matters. Inequality matters. The place that has the lowest life expectancy in this country is not a surprise or should be a surprise to no one. It's the southeastern U.S. It's Alabama, it's Mississippi, it's Louisiana, it's Arkansas, it's those states. Tennessee, it's all of Georgia, it's those states. And not by a little bit, by a lot. And you go, well, it's just the South. Now, the pandemic had an awful lot to do with it. According to the CDC, COVID explains about half of the decline in life expectancy. But you have heart disease, you have chronic liver disease, you've got cirrhosis, you've got suicide, you've got opioid addiction, you've got all of these other problems. And policy tends to be what drives this. The states that have the lowest life expectancy, surprise, surprise. Many of them, eight of the 12 at the bottom, have not passed the Affordable Care Act, have not expanded Medicaid in their states. So are you surprised that people who aren't getting care are dying younger? No. So the question becomes, how do we as a civil society take crisis and take horrible situations like the death of this man and not use it for political fodder, but actually use it as a moment to go, a moment of self-reflection, to say that could be me, that could be you, that could be my brother or sister, that could be my neighbor, and make sure that it doesn't happen anymore. See, this is, again, my problem. The red hats and the blue hats are going after, hey, we're going to score on the other side. How do we fix this problem? How do we move forward and make sure that this doesn't happen again? I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people all the time.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Donald Trump, today, truth out. I have absolutely no idea who this woman is. This verdict is a disgrace. A continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. And then he truthed out again. A very unfair trial. And my thought goes, how does he know he wasn't there? Now, for those who don't know, he was found liable in the sexual harassment case with E.G. Carroll. $5 million was the verdict. I'm surprised it was that little, but maybe the Stormy Fund's got some change left over in it, and we'll see. I'm expecting an appeal. Because, bad news does really well for Trump. Now, the guy must live a charmed life, because today it was announced that federal prosecutors have filed criminal charges against George Santos, the Republican representative from New York. Couple of mistruths, couple of what we used to call lies, some fabrications. He's going to appear in federal court tomorrow. So we will see exactly what he's been charged with. But you know what this does? This takes some of the attention away from Trump and his loss. And my thought today went, is he tired of winning yet? Just my thoughts. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. How are you, Alice?
I'm totally insane. How are you?
Predictably insane. Okay, good. How are you? What you got on your mind?
What I wanted to say was these health care costs. When I had my first heart attack back in 2017 and had 2 stents put in, I went in on Monday, and I went home the next day because I made them let me out. To have that heart attack and 2 stents put in, it was over $200,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So the second heart attack in 2020, no stents, Same amount of time. Went in on Sunday, made them let me out on Monday. Had the balloon procedure done on. It was almost $175,000. So these people, if they think that they're safe from these health care costs, they're crazy. They're not. And as for Donald Trump, I just keep saying you can't kill evil. So have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it. No, I mean, she's right. I mean, I've known, people throughout the years who they've been just crushed by healthcare costs. And there's only so much that you can dig up out of pocket because, as she said, look, she had a heart attack, had to have a couple of procedures, 2 procedures. You're looking at over $300,000. Who's got that in a sock in their drawer? Who's got that between the mattresses? Literally nobody. And this is why I keep coming back to, we have this fetish, this want to hold on to employer-sponsored health care that ties us to our job, without understanding that, one long-term illness could wipe that out. You get sick and you're off 8-10 months, your employer doesn't have to keep you. If you work for a small business, they don't have to keep you a week or two. And this is where, I think about Joe quite often in these moments. Here was a guy who thought he did everything right. Led 70 years of his life, good, clean, by the scriptures kind of living. Good, God-fearing, conservative Christian Republican. And where did he end up? He ended up living in the woods because our system failed him, because the policies pushed by far too many Republicans failed him. This goes back to the Reagan era. This, hooray for me and the heck with everyone else. And look, the vast majority of us are probably not going to end up in that situation because we're going to be fortunate enough to have a safety net of our own. We're going to have family. Maybe we're able to weather those storms. But for those who don't, this is serious. And in the wealthiest country in the history of civilization, at its wealthiest moment, you're telling me we can't solve this problem? And I know this is a big one. This is an enormous problem. We can't even solve the smaller ones. I saw another shooting. A Louisiana guy evidently didn't like the fact that some children were playing hide and seek outside his home. So he decided the best way to tell those children to stop was to shoot them. Yeah, shot a 14-year-old girl. Back of the head. Now, kid's going to make it, fortunately. But what makes someone go, the best way to solve this problem of those noisy kids, is this where we're going? And I know, Rick, it's not the gun. The gun helped. Because, without the gun, this is just an old curmudgeon out on the patio going, get off my lawn! That's all this is. And I don't know if this is the new in-chic thing. I don't know if this is the dog whistle coming out of the right-wing outrage machine. Go out and shoot the kids in your front yard. How dare they roll a ball? Man, what kind of a society are we coming to be? Now remember, and I think later on in the program I'm going to talk about some of the emails I've gotten from my Christian friends who are very angry at me. And I throw back at them, Christian friends. All of the things that you talk about, this utopian society of theocratic rule, this utopian society where we're all quoting and toting the Bible around. Where are the actions? Where are the deeds? I hear your words. Hear your words. I know you are telling us you're giving some thoughts and prayers to stuff. I was always told about deeds, actions, and deeds, doing stuff. How do we fix this in a much more humane, sane, rational way? I know it's not written in the book. You're gonna have to think about this one. Gonna have to use your free will. Quick break. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day the West Coast Maritime Strike began. It was an historic strike that shut down the major ports along the Pacific coast. The strike also coincided with the pivotal Minneapolis Teamsters strike and the Toledo Autolite strike. From Seattle to San Diego, longshoremen walked off the job. Harry Bridges led the Albion Hall Caucus in San Francisco. They demanded higher wages, shorter hours, and union representation. They also demanded a coast-wide agreement and a union hiring hall to replace the hated daily shape-up. Longshoremen were fed up with the gangster-run company union that controlled the arbitrary day labor hiring on the docks. From the pages of the Waterfront Worker newsletter, militant longshoremen took on the shippers, the government, craft unionism, and racism of the union. On the first day of the strike, dozens of black longshoremen joined the union and convinced others not to scab. Soon, all unions on the docks walked out in solidarity. By May 15th, the West Coast ports were completely shut down, and 25,000 were out on strike by the end of the month. In his book, Workers on the Waterfront, Bruce Nelson notes the qualities that made the strike a success. He points to the militancy and discipline required to stand up to the National Guard during the deadly Maine battle on July 5th. The workers' solidarity across craft lines necessary for the San Francisco general strike that followed, a defiant rank-and-file independence, and the understanding that intensive red baiting could only serve the bosses. Though workers were forced back to work through arbitration, they were awarded their demands that fall. It would take more job actions to make those awards a reality. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Tiptoeing around the democratic process, Indiana's Republican legislature has become the latest of that ilk to slap its local school librarians with an idiotic book ban. Snuck into law behind closed doors, the partisan Hoosier law requires librarians to pull books that the learned lawmakers consider, quote, harmful to minors. Just to juice up the ignorance and arrogance of their ban, the law criminalizes failure to comply by punishing librarians with up to 2.5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. What constitutes harmful to minors? Indiana's priggish politicians declared nudity, sexual references, and offensive content to community standards to be violations. Obviously, then, books commanding that rape victims marry their rapists, as well as celebrating daughters who seduce their father to bear his children, plus endorsement of bestiality, copulation in church, women boiling their children for food, and so god-awful much more, have to be ripped from the shelves and burned. Only all of this is enshrined in the Bible, which is urged on Indiana's youngsters in Sunday schools, conveniently placed in the bedstands of every chain hotel and cited by pious lawmakers as their moral compass. The so-called Good Book is replete with the gross and explicit sexual material that Republican book censors call harmful. Indeed, a feisty civil libertarian organization named Freedom from Religion Foundation gives away book labels you can stick in Bibles, warning that, quote, literal belief in this book may endanger your health and life. This is Jim Hightower saying the books that right-wing autocrats want to ban are not pornographic. They just explore ideas that those politicians don't like, ideas that young people are already grappling with. And by the way, why not require these past lawmakers to disclose what licentious material they've been reading before they dictate what we read?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is kind of a big deal. I saw the headline, Italy intends to exit China Belt and Road Pact as relations sour. And my ears perked up going, hey, maybe there's some way back from the Trump years void of dealing with other countries and all from 2010 forward of not helping out internationally where China stepped in and filled the void. Maybe this is a start. So here to share some thoughts on this and whether this is a big deal or not, I've asked my good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. He's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's good to be with you as always.
So, is this a big deal? Am I making too much of this? The fact that you've got Italy who's saying, you know what, we're gonna pull out of this pact because China's spent, what is it, some like $900 billion globally on these projects, and Italy's going, yeah, maybe we're gonna side back with the U.S.
Yeah, I think it is a very significant development, and it is reversing course for the Italians. They have a new government. I mean, this government didn't negotiate the Belt and Road, and so I guess it shouldn't come as a huge surprise that they want to stake out a slightly different policy. But this is pretty big. It takes an active, essentially withdrawal for Italy to move out of this, which will be kind of a a poke in the eye of Beijing to do that so publicly.
Yeah.
And but I think that the Italian government understands that while Belt and Road may be attractive because of all the investment that you mentioned, Rick, there's also strings attached.
Always
and
is.
And those strings are too much to bear in a lot of ways, and it's hitting home in a lot of ways in Italy, like it is here. And I think there's concerns. I mean, Pirelli, which is probably one of the most iconic industrial brands in Italy, the tire maker. Its largest investor now is a state-owned enterprise from China. I think that raises concerns. There's a lot of other kind of washing of Chinese products that occurs through Italy as well. And so it's been a real mixed bag. But this is big. And one of the things you pointed out, Rick, is that I think this is also the Biden administration actively trying to encourage allies to do the right thing rather than to drive them into the arms of China or a kind of indifference. So it is a step in the right direction.
Now, for those who don't know, what is the China Belt and Road Initiative? How do you see this? I know China's got their version. How do you see this, and what the goals were or are?
Yeah, well, the goals are the stated goals and the actual goals are two different things. Let's be very clear about that. I mean, the stated goal is to help develop infrastructure for trade and economic development globally, with China as a financier of this. The actual goal was to position China at the center of global commerce and to, in addition, expand its economic and military power. And just one example of this, Sri Lanka, Belt and Road member, China built a port. Turned out they're putting military vessels at that port in addition to commercial vessels, which is going to create a significant problem in the Indian Ocean. And other countries are realizing that there's a lot of strings attached to this investment as well, as that the profits are tending to flow back to Beijing
Right.
from all of this. And
Now this is predictable. I mean, I'm gonna take the position, and you can agree or disagree, that the Tea Party era of we can't do any foreign aid, we can't do any of that stuff, that everything we got to do is do here, and then the Trump years of turning our back on places and not and doing any of the things that we've done in the past left this void open, left this space for China to interject themselves. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I think that's really important, is that kind of isolationism left the door wide open. And then I would add one thing to that, is that the one attempt that we had with engagement, which was the Trans-Pacific Partnership that was negotiated in the Obama administration, was really misguided. And it was based on this old premise of free trade where the average people in all the countries won't see any of the benefits from this, but the elites would.
Yeah.
So it was rejected, in the United States, and it had. But that was like our one shot at trying to get into the game, and it was using one of those old failed neoliberal strategies. So it didn't work, I like what the Biden administration is trying to do now with an economic framework that is like, look, it's not going to make a difference if the tariffs are any lower, but let's have some real rules for the game that are going to benefit working people, that can expand some trade and investment, but to do it in a way that could be mutually beneficial, and also to get some of the supply chains, understanding that the United States isn't going to bring all the stuff back from China. That's just, we don't have the capacity to do that, quite honestly. But that our allies should get some of that as well coming out of China, and that it becomes a much more reliable, resilient sourcing strategy for global companies.
And maybe we don't allow a country to use slave labor. Maybe we go there. And I know that the committee on China had a hearing. The conversation around employment labor participation and labor abuses. I know that came up. Walk me through some of that.
Yeah, I think this is important because there is this select committee on China, which I think is good because it shows more of a congressional interest in this as well, which should drive the Biden administration to do even more on this. And one of the areas they're looking at is the economy, security, human rights, and how all of that intersects. And you have this unfortunate perfect storm of these Chinese shopping apps that are very popular in the United States. They're two of the top 5 apps on the on the Android or the iPhone right now, and they use this commercial model where they're sourcing from regions in China where there's a genocide underway against the Uyghur people, who are a Muslim Turkic population that is differentiated from the Han Chinese, but it's been subject to a lot of abuse, and the United States has called this a genocide. And there's forced labor that's taking place for supplying cotton or spinning some of it or to produce some of these garments, and it's all over a bunch of different supply chains. And we have a law that's designed to stop that. It's called the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. But, and this is important, the way that these Chinese shopping apps operate is direct to consumer. And so they can evade a lot of the trade laws that we have in place. It's very convoluted. And believe me, there will be attempts to fix this legislatively. But to this committee's credit, they're trying to open the public's eyes to all of these challenges that we see with these shopping apps because they're so popular. And, this hasn't got as much attention as TikTok has because of just the kind of the social media aspect of TikTok. But this is really probably even more economically important than TikTok, and also probably has much more of an ethical dilemma here than TikTok does as well. And believe me, there are big problems with TikTok.
All of them. No, look, I mean, when the whole TikTok debacle was going on, when it was in the news, and I guess we've missed that cycle's over now. We don't seem to care, I guess. Is that where we are? I was saying these other apps because 4 of the top 5 apps in the country were Chinese apps, and I'm like, these are people who are collecting your data. These are the people who have your home address, your credit card information. These folks got a lot on you, and we're okay with that. There's no, because I think a lot of people believe that there are protections in place for them, when I don't believe there are any whatsoever.
No, and there have been documented cases where what these companies are saying about data protection or the Chinese government's access to it isn't the case. And so just allowing them to operate freely in the United States, particularly when our guys don't have the same opportunity in Beijing, never will have the same opportunity in China. Just to have that kind of asymmetry and to expose us like that, all for the sake of watching a stupid 15-second dance video and finding a piece of a garment that's going to last you about 2 months before it disintegrates, but it's made by Uyghur slaves. That seems like a ridiculous thing, yet it's happening. And we should care about it. And so I'm glad there is some attention
No, we should be angry about it, angry at our government for not addressing this sooner. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website, if you want to take a look at the work that they do. But I got to get your thought on this other story. It broke yesterday that this Princeton Review and Tutor.com evidently are now owned by a Chinese private equity firm. This app and this Princeton Review, this is where a lot of our soldiers end up going when they're going for higher education. It's where a lot of our GI money is going. We're basically opening up for students, or I should say we're opening up for China, all of our students and the access to information. And my mind goes into some very dark places about the kind of propaganda. I mean, you got the dance videos and the stuff that comes with it. This is higher ed. This is something different for me. This is scary for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you raised this up, because I do think that there's obviously some xenophobia about China or Chinese people, and I don't like any of that. I don't agree with any of that. But that does not mean that we should not scrutinize investments like this. And in this case, I think the investments do raise concerns. And those concerns are exactly what you are raising up, is that this is one of the foundational pieces of higher education. Will Chinese directors have a say in curriculum or how this is administered? Or will it crowd out others as well, because the cost of capital is a little different in China? And will this become even more kind of monopolistic? And so there's major concerns about this, which is why there must be more scrutiny about both investments from countries of concern that are coming into the United States, as well as our companies' investments in countries like China or Russia or wherever.
Yeah.
And what the implications of that may be for our economic security, our national security. And there are mechanisms in place, but I think they're far too weak.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, and I'm going to steal from the Wall Street Journal article where I saw this at. They said that Tutor.com has a long-standing contract to provide its services free to active duty, reserve, and other U.S. military service members. Also holds contract with school districts, including Los Angeles, Patterson, New Jersey, Loudoun County, Virginia. Also, it's a vetted vendor at the Texas Education Agency, New Hampshire Department of Education, and many other states.
Yeah.
This is something that's gotten into our school system. And look, you said it a moment ago. The Chinese would never give us the kind of access. The Chinese government is never going to give us the kind of reciprocal access that they're getting from us. So for me, this kind of stuff has to stop on a certain level.
Yeah, I do think that, again, we need to pause all of this before we figure out what kind of impacts this investment will have. What is the situation with respect to data and data privacy? And the access that the Chinese government or intelligence agencies might have to it, because we've seen what they will do with critics who are even overseas,
Yep.
like in the United States or other countries. They don't respect international borders here. And so, unfortunately, we can't assume the best intentions for the Chinese government. We have to assume that there is going to be malintent, and that means we've got to scrutinize this more. And we have to protect the interests of consumers in the United States, as well as our economic and national security.
Yeah, I don't want to be xenophobic, and just because it's a Chinese person that owns it, that's not my problem. It's the Chinese Communist government. We don't have the same access. If you live here and you're Chinese and you own this company, I don't really care.
Yeah.
The connection to the Chinese Communist government, that's what I have a problem with.
Right. I agree. And there are many awesome Chinese American entrepreneurs who have made it big, who have made our country a better place, and we need to lift them up and protect them. That is not what we're talking about here. you're exactly right, is that these, the investment coming from China should raise concerns in part because of the system of government, because of the track record of Beijing, and also, to your point, reciprocity, is that we just don't have similar access in China. So why should they be making a bigger buck off of American consumers when our companies really don't have any shot like that in China right now?
Finally, I want to get some of your thoughts on, you guys are running a call to action.
Yeah.
I want folks to reach out to our Department of Transportation, our Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. I guess until May 22nd, can go to AmericanManufacturing.org, sign up. What are they signing up for?
Yeah, so right now the Department of Transportation is soliciting comments on whether or not to end a long-time waiver of a Buy America requirement. And this waiver was for what we called manufactured products. There's Buy America for iron and steel, and that's in the law. But for a long time, there's been this waiver that Buy America, when we're doing infrastructure funding, doesn't have to apply necessarily to manufactured products. We're saying get rid of the waiver. The Department of Transportation is asking for comments on this. And so it's crunch time. We're at the end of this, and there's some big, enormous contracting companies that want to keep this waiver in place because they can make more money that way. But at the end of the day, it costs American jobs. And this president, Joe Biden, wants to be a made in America, Buy America president. And so this is a real test, I think, for the department and for the administration. So it's important that voices be heard, and it's really easy just to click through, add your name to this, and it will make a big impact because folks at the Department of Transportation will be required by law to take a look at the comments that are submitted.
Good stuff. And you go to AmericanManufacturing.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can do that. Add your name, add a comment, have your voice heard. And most certainly, we want our infrastructure and our things built here with things made here. Seems simple. Scott, appreciate the time. As always, good stuff, my friend.
You bet, Rick. Thanks so much. Thanks for lifting up that action as well. Appreciate it.
Our good friend Scott Paul. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around to listen to The Rick Smith Show.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1972. That was the day that employees at the Farrah Manufacturing Company went out on strike. The company was one of the top producers of men's and boys' pants in the country, and the second largest employer in El Paso, Texas. The majority of workers were Chicano. More than 80% were women. These workers worked long hours for low wages and were required to meet a high quota demand. In the late 1960s, some of the male employees began to discuss their working conditions and what they could do to change things. One employee remembered the early days of organizing sometimes happened after softball games between the teams of workers from the different departments in the plant. We'd sit around after the game and talk about these things and the union. Men working in the cutting room voted to affiliate with the Amalgamated Clothing Workers of America. Workers from the San Antonio plant came to El Paso to support the union effort. These workers were fired. In response, 500 El Paso workers walked off the job. They demanded the right to have a union. Soon, more than 3,000 Farrah employees went out on strike. The strike cause won the support of the Roman Catholic bishop in El Paso, who supported a boycott against Farrah pants. The AFL-CIO called for a boycott. The campaign against Farrah soon spread across the country. Even though the company brought in scab replacement labor, the effort to get a union continued. The fight wore on until March of 1974, when the National Labor Relations Board found in favor of the employees who had been fired. Unionization had come to Farrah. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So my favorite tweet today, the tweet of the day, Mandy Patinkin, the actor, he tweeted out with a video of himself, and for the people watching on video, I'm going to play the 17-second video of Mandy Patinkin. Here it is. There's the 17 seconds. We're about halfway through. Yep, he's still doing it. You hear that? Oh, Mandy tweeted out, he said, "This is what I would be doing on TV without writers. Writers are asking for fairness when the studios invest millions in producing films or a series. They can pay for the value writers create." And I'm going, wow, what a novel concept. Actually paying workers what they create and what they're worth. What a marvelous thought that would be. And it's one of these things where you go, I'm fully behind the Writers Guild getting the wages that they earn, the compensation that they earn, and the fact that they're out on strike. People in the community should be supporting them, and they are. I mean, it's quite amazing. Now, there's this guy, Adam Conover. He's one of the executives for the Writers Guild of America. He's also one of the guys who used to be on a TV show that my kids used to love. It was called Adam Ruins Everything. And Adam ruins this as well on the strike line, which I think is an important moment. So this is the tweet from Adam Conover that I wanted to share a little bit. There's audio to this one. There just isn't silence like the last one. But here's Adam Conover.
It's a little bit complicated. So most unions have no strike clauses in their contracts. That means that while they're under contract, they can't strike. They can't fully do a sympathy strike, right? But it's also every individual worker's individual right to not cross a picket line. So even though IATSE cannot, declare a sympathy strike, they have told their members it's all of up to each of you individually if you want to cross a line or not. And since most of them are good union members, that's a hard decision for some of them. Now, we don't particularly judge, oh, that guy crossed, that guy didn't, because everyone's in their own situation. Maybe somebody, needs to feed their family and they know they're going to get replaced if they don't cross the picket line. But we want to make that a hard decision. And so any amount of solidarity is good solidarity. And the Teamsters specifically have a very blanket, Teamsters do not cross picket lines policy that's deep in their culture. So that's why, the whole goal is to stop the Teamster trucks.
Now, here's the thing. This is where Adam, I'm of the mindset you never cross a picket line, ever. Ever, not even clinically. You don't do it. You don't scab on another person's strike line. You do not do that. And he's a lot more forgiving than I would ever be if someone crossed my picket line. But the difference is, and the reason, and I want to throw this out because it's good on the Teamsters, and a lot of unions have this in their contracts. In my master freight agreement contract, throughout all the years that I've worked, there is an article in the Constitution, Article 9 of our contract, the protection of rights part of it, that says that you don't cross a picket line. You will not be discharged. You will not be disciplined. You will not be replaced. But you do not have to touch struck goods. You don't have to cross a picket line. You don't have to move struck goods. This is not just in the culture, it's in the contract. And this is where, again, having a union be able to say we're not doing it is a real power for working people. Because he said, look, like Adam said, look, that's an individual choice. I would hope no one would do it. Because, well, a scab is the lowest form of, well, I'm not going to go that right now. You don't scab on another person's, on their picket line, ever. But it's if you get it into the contracts, this gives working people more power. And it's my view that the more we stick together, The more we stand shoulder to shoulder instead of crossing the picket line, maybe walk on the picket line, the better it's going to be for all of us. So good on them. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back.
Every time the alert comes on, we're on the alert. You want to look and yet you're scared to look because they might say it's your town that's actually on fire.
Early, intense wildfire outbreak pushes Alberta, Canada into state of emergency. Study concludes Spain's record-shattering extreme heat impossible without climate change. Plus, offshore wind farms are far less dangerous to birds than previously thought. Study finds
Lies in that study. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Freedoms. They're under attack. They feel it every day. They see it when they watch the news, whether it's your light bulbs, your toilet flushers, your shower heads, your gas stoves, or this week, your washing machines.
Well, thank you for that list of things that nobody is taking away from anyone. Senator Marsha Blackburn, you loon. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, you never report on all of the things that are being taken away from people. Why is that?
You mean I don't report on all the things that aren't happening?
You don't report on imaginary things. That is correct.
True.
What do you got for us today that isn't imaginary?
Well,
you're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Former President Trump's attorney says he's happy his client is not being branded a rapist. Natalie Migliori reports.
Joe Tacopina says he's gratified jurors rejected the rape claim, but not happy Trump was found liable on other charges.
We'll obviously be appealing those other findings, but they rejected her rape claim, and she'd always claimed this was a rape case.
Trump took to Truth Social following the verdict, calling it a disgrace and a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. He also said he has no idea who his accuser, E. Jean Carroll, is. I'm Natalie Migliori, New York.
Trump is set to appear in a CNN presidential town hall Wednesday night in New Hampshire. He plans to take questions from local Republicans and undeclared voters ahead of the 2024 GOP primary. There's no movement towards a deal to raise the debt ceiling. President Biden met with congressional leaders Tuesday at the White House to try to reach an agreement to raise the nation's borrowing limit before the start of June, but Republicans say nothing positive came from the sit-down. Republicans refuse to raise the debt limit unless Biden and the Democrats agree to sweeping spending cuts. The governor of Arizona says her state will face incredible challenges because the federal government isn't ready for the end of Title 42.
During my meeting with sheriffs, I heard the devastating impact of federal inaction on our public safety.
The COVID-era rule was used to expedite deportations, and Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs says she's witnessed firsthand the capacity challenges already faced at temporary migrant shelters. Meantime, New York Governor Kathy Hochul is declaring a state of emergency as she prepares her state for an influx of asylum seekers. Tucker Carlson says his show is relaunching on Twitter. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Hi, I'm food critic Alan Borgen, and I'm excited to tell you about Ray's Shanghai Bistro, located next to Redlands DMV on Lagonia in Redlands. Ray's Shanghai Bistro offers the largest and most delicious array of traditional and original Chinese dishes available in the Inland Empire. Some of my favorite dishes are the house-made pot stickers, the crisp pork spare ribs with garlic, their unique spicy lamb with bamboo, the sweet and tangy deep-fried orange peel beef, and the savory basil spicy shrimp, plus lots of vegetarian dishes. Whether you dine in, pick up the food, or have them cater your next party or special occasions, you will see why Ray's, spelled R-U-I', Shanghai Bistro, is truly the best Chinese restaurant in the Inland Empire. Their website is raysshanghaibistro.net. That's raysshanghaibistro.net. R-U-I-S, shanghaibistro.net. Happy eating. You won't be disappointed.
It's that time of year again. No, not the holidays. Medicare open enrollment. And if you have questions about Medicare, you should talk to the local experts. Paul Barrich and Associate. Paul and his agents are certified with plans that are accepted by most of the medical groups in our area. Call 909-793-0385. Their services are free, and after 41 years in the business, their agents are trained to help you pick the plan that's right for you.
It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center, High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart.
What does the WeatherBug app tell you?
My commute will be a doozy today.
Pack my allergy meds.
Lightning. Pick up a pizza, not a tennis racket.
With more free map layers than any other weather app, WeatherBug tells you more of what you need to know to prepare you for the unpredictable. Discover why over 10 million users choose WeatherBug.
Maybe it's a commute to the couch day.
Download the WeatherBug app today for free.
Grab your masks and beads and let the good times roll at the 2023 Making Hope Happen Foundation Gala Celebration on Thursday, May 11th at the Sterling Natural Resource Center. This year's Mardi Gras theme includes delicious Creole and Cajun food stations, circus acts, a magician, great networking, opportunities to bid on student art, and a guarantee that your participation will make hope happen for area children, youth, adults, and families. Experience all of it in a unique, state-of-the-art facility. For more information, please visit www.makinghope.org/gala 2023. That's www.makinghope.org/gala 2023 or call 909-245-1454. That's 909-245-1454. Who can pass up a little slice of the Big Easy here in the Inland Empire? Go to makinghope.org/gala 2023 and we'll see you there on May 11th.
You're listening to the Tahibo Tea Club radio show, hosted by Milan Vukovic, founder of the Tahibo Tea Club.
One of the questions that I oftentimes get is, how did I start the Tahibo Tea Club? Well, what happened was in 1998, my dad started having stomach problems, and he started losing weight and started going to doctors, and they couldn't find anything, and he kept losing weight. They couldn't find anything, and he kept losing weight. They couldn't find anything. And, he's normally a man of 180 pounds, and, he was losing 10 pounds every couple of weeks. He was down to less than 130. So finally my dad says to the doctors, he says, I believe you that you can't find anything, but you got to understand, I'm sick. I'm normally 180 pounds, and I'm less than 130 pounds. Anyhow, finally, they actually did find cancer in my father, and he had colon cancer that had metastasized to his pancreas, and the size of the tumor on his pancreas was about the size of half a brick. And the colon, for conventional medicine, is pretty easy for them to operate on, because the colon is basically like an ordinary garden hose. We have 6 foot of it. They can cut out a foot, resection it, and it's not an easy operation for the patient, because they cut you up from your breastplate and all the way down to your belly button to do it. So it's not an easy operation for the patient, but for the doctors, it's pretty mechanical and pretty easy. Like I said, like resectioning a garden hose. And so they did that. They performed surgery on my dad's colon. Now, on the pancreas, though, that's a different story. In 1998, they did no operations whatsoever on the pancreas. These days, they'll operate on the pancreas if it's on the small end of the pancreas. 10-15% on that small end. Other than that, pancreatic cancer is one of the most deadliest cancers that there is. Very, very few people survive a year with pancreatic cancer. So in any event, I was called by the doctors and said, "Hey, listen, you need to put your father's affairs in order because there's nothing we can do for the tumor that's on his pancreas, and your dad might have, maybe 2 months to live." So I started planning a funeral, and I called friends and family and said, "Hey, listen, here's the situation with Dad. If you want to see him, you might want to come and see him now." And so people started coming over, paying their respects, and this one family came and they brought Tahibo tea with them, and they said this tea helped heal our brother from cancer. So I'm looking at these people like they're Martians or something because, my dad's getting treated at the Houston Medical Center, the biggest medical center in the world, bigger than Boston, 4 hospitals right next door to each other, 50 medical buildings right beside those, and nobody's saying anything but, plan a funeral. And these people are telling me that the tea might help my dad. But in any event, I'm polite to the people and thank them for coming and all that. And after that, they left. My dad figured, well, what the heck? If I've got 2 months to live, what's the difference? I'm drinking water. I'm drinking tea. I got to drink something anyway. So he starts drinking a tea. And 2 months later, my dad had a scheduled CAT scan. And so he goes for his CAT scan. And they, take the scan. And they think that their CAT scan machine's broken because they can't find his, the tumor that used to be the size of a half a brick on his pancreas. And so they says to my dad, listen, they says, there's something wrong with our CAT scan machine here, but the hospital next door, they have a CAT scan machine as well. And since you already drank the contrast dye, we'll phone them and you walk on over there. They'll take a picture so that you don't have to come back next week when our machine gets fixed. So my dad did and walked over. They took a picture, no cancer. And so my dad's been cancer-free now for over 23 years. In 1998, when he had his bout with cancer, he was 66 years old. He's 89 now.
Tahibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau de Arco Super Tea helps build red corpuscles in the blood which carry oxygen to our organs and cells. Our organs and cells need oxygen to regenerate themselves. The immune system needs oxygen to develop, and cancer dies in oxygen. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit TahiboTeaClub.com. Tahibo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy, O, then continue with the word tea and then the word club. The complete website is TahiboTeaClub.com or call us at 818-610-8088, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-610-8088, TahiboTeaClub.com. Tahibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau de Arco Super Tea comes from the only tree in the world that fungus does not grow on. As a result, it naturally has antifungal, anti-infection, antiviral, antibacterial, anti-inflammation, and anti-parasite properties. So the tea is great for healthy people because it helps build the immune system, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. The tea is also organic and naturally caffeine-free. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95, which includes shipping. To order, please visit TahiboTeaClub.com. Tahibo is spelled T like Tom, A-H-E-E-B like boy, O, then continue with the word tea and then the word club. The complete website is TahiboTeaClub.com or call us at 818-610-8088, Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. California time. That's 818-610-8088, TahiboTeaClub.com.
And not only has he been cancer-free for 23 years, he's in such good health that he still mows my lawn, which I'd be embarrassed about it if it wasn't for the fact that he enjoys doing it. and I know it's good for him. So it's certainly been a blessing in my family's life. And, God willing, our tea will have the same benefits for you, your family, and friends that it's had for my family and so many others. So after my dad's miraculous case, I was buying the tea where I could find it, when I could find it. And, the problem is that the quality they have at the Whole Foods, the health foods, the supermarkets and everything, when you can't find it is junk. And not only that, and now it's even worse with the, all these internet resellers on eBay and on Amazon.com where, they're selling everything from, Tahibo tea to ingredients to make your own soap with. So you know that they don't know anything about anything basically, right? And the worst thing is, besides the fact that the quality is pathetic, is that the directions they usually give on how to make it are wrong. They'll tell you to steep it like you would a bag of Lipton tea for 5 minutes. Well, whether you start out with good quality or bad quality Paudalco Tahibo tea, it's made from wood. It's not made from the leaf of the tree. It's made from wood. In our case, we only use the inner bark of the tree where the arterial and vein system reside, which in a tree is called the xylem and phloem, because this tree never gets sick, never gets infected, and never gets infested. So the most potent part is the part that supplies the nutrients to the rest of the tree, which is the xylem and the phloem, which resides inside the inner bark. So that's the only part that we harvest, as opposed to stuff you can buy at the store where they grind up like hamburger any part of the tree, and they tell you to steep it. Well, as I was saying, whether you start out with good quality or bad quality, it's made from wood, and you're not going to get much out of wood if you soak it for 5 minutes. So even though we call our product tea, when you prepare it properly, what you're actually making is a decoction. Excuse me. And a decoction is actually just a fancy word for what our forefathers used to do when they used to take a root and cook it in order to release its beneficial properties. So it's really easy to make, but it's like cooking spaghetti, not like steeping tea. And what we do is we have it harvested in the rainforest in Brazil. We put it on ocean-bound containers. Each ocean-bound container holds 16,000 kilos, which is 35,000 pounds, and we bring back multiple containers at a time. We bring it back here to the port of Los Angeles, which these days looks like it's under a naval blockade because of the supply chain issues, but nonetheless, we've been fortunate enough to be able to not run out, even with the shipping times being dramatically increased, as well as the costs obviously of shipping just going up through the roof. And don't forget, you can also stream our programs and listen to them anytime, day or night, on iHeartRadio, or actually on any streaming service that you have. If you have Spotify or